He's none other than Dr. Bhatti and Dr. S.S. Bhatti. He's the master of each subject in the horizon of art, and he's author, researcher, art critique, artist, poet, to name a few. And above all, he's a guru for all of us. Dr. Bhatti, you are welcome, sir. And I cannot introduce him in a few words. More is less for his stature, but if I were to put words in today's concept, he is art and creativity personified. Dr. Bhatti is an architect and alumnus of Sir J.J. College of Art, Architecture in Bombay. Can I please request everyone to mute themselves? Can you please all mute? He's an alumnus of Sir J.J. College of Architecture in Bombay, took over the reins of Chandigarh College of Architecture in April 1982, and earned his first doctorate on Chandigarh in the context of Le Corbusier's Statue of Land, a study of plan, action, and reality in 1991. This work won him 5th JII Award and National Award for Excellence in Architecture. He has authored many books. Besides his work and proficiency in architecture and its offshoot subjects, his power of aligning and amalgamating spirituality into rendering his paintings or penning the verses is undefeatable. The ease of portraying his thoughts into words and sketches is an art that cannot be acquired, but one that needs clarity of thoughts and meditative sculpting. So over to you, sir. With your vast experience, what should an architect learn in art and design in order to become a holistic professional? And please take us through the journey of a few of your artworks.
Thank you
Over
very
to
much.
you.
It's a great pleasure and moment of pride for me to be facing my very brilliant students who have done so well professionally to be, I think each one of them is now a celebrity. Meeting some of you after 4 decades or so. I'm very happy really that all of you are very actively involved in the profession, especially the creative side of it, which means that you are not using it to earn livelihood, but to enrich yourself and equip yourself to serve society at large, which is the purpose of human life ultimately. I'm very grateful to Deepika, who is a very understanding and a very considerate friend, young friend, who always gives me so much appreciation as a kind of stimulant so that I may go on with renewed vigor in my journey on this earth. Like she has said, I would like to begin with telling you that each one of you is a born artist. The problem is that I think millions of us do not know they are so. They are more, I think, puzzled by other people's genius rather than looking at their own. So in this sense, I would say that my own journey began when I realized from my father, who was a self-taught professional of great versatility, combining classical music with wrestling prowess, designing 2 gurdwaras, Anandpur Sahib and Panja Sahib, now in Pakistan. He had learned so many arts to great perfection. And there is one piece in my home which is of carving and the use of lathe. I was wondering why I didn't realize when he was alive how he did that. Now I keep wondering that there is so much of technological advancement and everything done in a very magical way. But he could on a late turn things of a few half a centimeter or less than in a great style. I'm still wondering how did he did it. But it is my ignorance that at that time I didn't know that he had done so wonderfully well. So what I'm trying to say is that he was the man to first initiate me into the versatility, which is the legacy of this great country. Unfortunately, we so-called moderns have no idea what we have inherited. And I keep telling people that it is like a great treasure having fallen into the lap of a prodigal son who doesn't realize what he has got. So one, in this ignorance, we are wasting away most of it and only talk about it in exaggerated pride without knowing what it is all about. So I began my journey there uh, in a state of subconsciousness, subconscious admiration of what we have inherited. And as I grew older and older, I developed a kind of conscious admiration for what there was all around. So kept studying and learning until recently when I've completed 55 disciplines uh, to their high professional level, which very few people can match in their lifetime. This is not in self-praise. This is just to tell you that much in this country that you can learn and enrich, that you may have to come here many times over to learn more and more. So to give you one illustration, even our own chief gods, Lord Rama and Lord Krishna, one was 14, master of 14 kalas, the other was master of 16. All there were Vishnu's avatars in human form. If God took several lakhs of years to two kalas to the existing one, I think how we mortals can learn in 5 years course or 50 years of life or 200 years. It is impossible. So I think we must begin there. And I keep telling people that now next time you go to a temple or a gurdwara or wherever you want to go, you must ask God for awakening the creativity that He's already endowed, so that you also begin that journey like that, rather than be greedy or lusty about life on this earth. Uh, to tell you something which you should learn before telling others how to learn is that I have developed a technique that whatever I've done, I've already published 35 books, which means 2 million words have been published. And most, unless there are other references, most of this work is my own original work. Origin means that it begins with me and ends there, with its outreach to everyone around the uh, in the environment that we live in. That the word itself has the meaning that you want to trace. It is not in the dictionary. It is not in any book, no granth, no other place. So we are talking about art this afternoon. So I will tell you how to look at it. ART, three letters. Art, ardency. R is rationality, and T is for technique. This is one part. The other part is that using these three things, I artificially reach out or reproduce what I call truth. So these are all ART. If you use this, I call it de-acronymization. Acronym is a word formed from many words, each letter from the first letter, like UNESCO. I have used this technique in the reverse order and figured out that I can build up my own dictionary. I have published already one with more than 500 words, which give you meanings much deeper than any dictionary the world can ever give. The problem with dictionaries is that they give meanings, connotations which are understood by a large majority of people. But art is something which makes you unique, discover your uniqueness as a human individual, so that you can develop that in your own way uh, as a fascinating journey. So, to begin with, art, as I've told you, similarly, design is a basic human act. And the word D stands for deliberate, E for effort. Unless you make deliberate effort, there is no design. And why do we design? Design is the only means by which we can ensure that we can create order out of the existing chaos. Therefore, art and design go together. But art has a larger connotation and larger application in terms of creativity and craft. As you may have known, if you haven't, please learn now that unless we study all other disciplines outside our own, especially the researches being done in science of various kinds, we will not know how to learn better. We keep learning by memorizing, which is not the way. Memory is already there with us, which is a great endowment of nature. But memory has to be fed with material which is stimulating, ideas already present within the human mind. We have to manifest them somehow. So unless you study that, you will never go very far. You will keep repeating what Picasso said, indulge in self-imitation. In this, I discovered long ago, and I read that book to my great enrichment, that in 1981, the American uh, neurosurgeon Sperry, Rogers Sperry, he was given the Nobel Prize for 1981 science. He discovered in the laboratory, actually, that the human brain has two hemispheres which are opposed to each other. The right is the uh, creative self, the emotion. This is the left, the uh, reason, the will, and everything else that we do consciously is here. This has the literary language, the verbal language, the non-verbal language is here. This one is holistic, the other one is sequential. All these qualities are figured out. And then the writer of this book said that it is amazing that people in the world long years ago, at least 5,000 years or more, knew this instinctively. And we have in our own country the earth Nari Ishwar concept, and the Chinese who outclass everyone else, they have the yin yang principle, which means that the two are together, the negative and the positive are together. They are not meant to neutralize each other, they are meant to be resolved in an act of creation. Otherwise, negative and positive forces will, neutralize each other, burn up or something like that. But in the case of creativity, it is not like that. So I would suggest that you keep reading all these things also. Uh, I have enriched myself by reading. I have read the best of biographies, at least 100 biographies I've read. I have read science, I have read every field, geography, anatomy, botany, everything. And it may please you to know that I have lectured to professional geographers, botanists, historians, and others. And they were very fascinated. How can an architect with training limited to building design could talk so authoritatively with authenticity about our discipline? Because in each case, I gave them new perception, a new view of their own field. Uh, what she has given me is a very long subject. So I will not waste more time on this because 10 minutes is just a very little time. just request her to show you a few paintings that she has with her. Uh, you can say this. When she assigned me this job, I came up with another idea. Art. When we say art, art is a divine endowment to every human being on the planet Earth. Uh, in terms of what it is, painting was born in the cave, sculpture was born in the forest. Uh, and we call our own profession Mother Art. But I figured out that only a couple of days ago that architecture arrived very late on the scene, but painting was there 60,000 years ago. So cave was the mother, not architecture, which means man-made structure was not there. So architecture happens to be, cave happens to be the surrogate mother of art. And as human beings came along the line of progress, they developed their own structures and their own art. Uh, but according to Picasso and my own independent judgment, no art so far produced in the modern world by anyone of any consequence can match the vigor and the intensity of the cave paintings in Altamira or the elsewhere. I'm showing you a few of my own to tell you that how art forms an important component of your training and practice. These things I did on the spot to teach my students how to do it. And it didn't take me very long, in I think about 40 minutes or half an hour. As you can see, this is Fatehpur Sikri done in watercolor. Uh, you can see other sketches also. Show this sketch. This sketch is in a pen, sketch pen. Next one. It might interest you to know that this I did in my second year at Bombay. I developed a plan for the theater, cinema theater, and did this perspective in second year, 1956. There is another one which will come later. On the same plan, by some modification, I did another one, a new, which is completely new, very, very different from this one. This painting I did when I joined architecture in 1955. Next one. We had Corbusier centenary, uh, and I was preparing for it. And when I went back home for lunch, I was wondering how to get it inaugurated. So during lunchtime, I did this quick sketch of Corbusier and brought it along. It is on canvas. And the chief commissioner assigned here, you can see little signature. What I'm trying to say here is that if you are an artist, you should learn anatomy also and learn how to draw human figures. This one is a continuous ink line from a pen. I didn't lift the pen and created this. I call it agony. As you can feel the pain, the agony in the expression. Next one. This one I did when I passed my BRs and I was without a job in Amritsar. So I thought I should use my time. This is from calendar. The other one was also a copy work. Next one. These are some of the paintings. I have done a large number of paintings, about 3,000 sketches, book designs, sculptures, and digital painting, even graphics. This one is a theme of Satyam Shivam Sundaram. I've shown all the fine arts. As you may know, they have been divided, and accepted the world over into three larger categories: the fine arts as visual or plastic arts like painting, sculpture, and architecture, or literary art like poetry, drama, and the rest of it, and performing arts, music, dance, other things. I've tried to show that in this painting. I have published my art. There is another one. It is called my poems, my paintings, and another book which is called uh, Modern Art and Other Essays, in which I have shown that the understanding of modern art is not there even with the best of modern artists. So I have tried to tell through that book, through that essay, how to look at modern art, why modern art should be different from all other arts which preceded it. Uh, I would request, even urge you to buy those books and read. If you are really interested in art, you will learn so much. You can never learn from any book. I can guarantee that. This 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 picture, I won many awards in art also, uh, along with the professional artists. This one I did on ivory sheet with watercolor. When I was a young boy, my father used to paint on this, and this has a low key. It doesn't take color quickly. So he had developed a technique in which he applied layers of paint, very light colors, and then built up it to required intensity. When I used to when I tried to use this painting for this medium for my paintings, I figured out that I can use this weakness to great advantage. So I painted this at random and I used the palette knife to pick out paint from here and there. And as you can see, this is quite exciting. Incidentally, unlike any painter, I have read most of the painters, and the best of them. I alone have developed about 15 different techniques of painting. So what I'm saying is that if you are an artist, you should also learn not only to paint, but how to paint every time new, because each theme requires a different approach, a different technique, a different set of materials. So unless you learn that, you are not a creative artist. Uh, to get inspired in this way, I think if you read Picasso or see his book, Henry Moore's books, or uh, the Dutch painter Van Gogh, others, they really inspire you because they have really devoted their life to it, great intensity. This I did in a artist workshop. As you can see, it is a contradiction of progress. There is a progress. You can see the plane and all, but you are gradually dying to yourself without knowing what it is all about, and use artificial salutations and other things to tell people that you are really happy and you are progressing. I think we
I
can
think that's
discuss it further with questions from your side.
so.
Uh,
Yeah, so I think we'll get to the questions by the end of it when all the participants, all the
yes, yes,
panelists have finished.
yes,
Thank
yes,
you
yes.
so much, sir. And it is really enriching. And I'm sure the audience who we all were looking forward to seeing you and hearing from you after such a long time. I think more than 3 decades for us.
Thank you for this great
They may be
opportunity.
the younger ones also, but for uh, I certainly, we have 30 years, more than 30 years since we graduated. And it's actually wonderful. And I personally am so honored, sir, to have you here. Thank you.
उसमें उसकी लाइटर साइड है थोड़ी सी वो हो जाएगी.
कौन सी
अभी
लाइटर साइड?
अभी अभी मैंने एक जोक मेरा डाइजेस्ट में छपा था. वो एक्चुअल जोक था वो. तो वो उसमें यही बताया हुआ था कि प्रकाश साहब ने मुझे कहा कि हम ना वेंसडे को असेंबली किया करेंगे, उसमें लेक्चर करवाओ, बाहर का कोई आदमी लाओ जो लेक्चर आर्किटेक्चर पे नहीं किसी और चीज पे दे। तो आई वॉज मेड इन चार्ज। 6 महीने मैंने करता रहा, तो बाद में पता चला देयर वाज नो स्पीकर अवेलेबल। तो आई टोल्ड हिम सॉरी सर, नो इट इज। कहता है ऐसे कैसे हो सकता है? मैंने कहा क्या करें, खुद करो। तो उन दिनों मैं फ्राइड की साइकोलॉजी पढ़ रहा था और अंग्रेजी भी साथ साथ सीख रहे थे। अंग्रेजी भी मुश्किल थी, वो उसके कॉन्सेप्ट भी मुश्किल थे। मैंने एक लेक्चर तैयार कर लिया 1 घंटे का, जाके घंटे का लेक्चर दे दिया। सारा कॉलेज बैठा हुआ था, पूरा फ्रंट रो में, प्रिंसिपल एंड दी होल फैकल्टी एंड एवरीवन। तो जब हुआ तो मैंने कहा इतनी मेहनत की, अब पूछे फीडबैक क्या है। मैंने कहा बताओ कि कोई क्वेश्चन पूछना है, कोई पूछे ना। मुझे बड़ा गुस्सा है, मैंने कहा हद हो गई यार, इतनी मेहनत की कोई बोल ही नहीं रहा। वो पीछे से एक हरियाणवी सा ऐसे सोया सोया उठा करके ना अंगड़ाई भी ले रहा था। कहता सर, बिफोर आई आस्क यू एनी क्वेश्चन, टेल मी द टॉपिक ऑफ योर टॉक।
Very nice, sir. It seems like old days, college days. आपके lectures में that part of
नहीं
humor
नहीं, वो
was
मुझे
always
वो पढ़ के लोग मुझे कहने लगे सर हमें तो समझ अभी भी नहीं आ रहा है। तो मैंने कहा यार कमाल तो ये कि देखो ना, फिर भी मुझे शाबाश दो कि मेरा पढ़ाया हुआ कुछ समझ नहीं आया और कहाँ तक पहुंच गए। समझ लेते तो आसमान पे चढ़ जाते हैं,
good, sir.
या
And
नहीं फिर भी पहुंच गए कहाँ। एनी वो होता है उसमें, वो प्रॉब्लम होती है कि अनलेस यू ओपन आउट योरसेल्फ, वो रिसेप्टिविटी इंप्रूव नहीं होती। उसको ज़र्फ बोलते हैं उर्दू में, ज़र्फ, कि आपकी रिसेप्टिविटी विलिंगनेस कितनी है, उसके हिसाब से वो बर्तन जितना बड़ा हो उतना पानी ज्यादा आता है। क्योंकि समंदर से पानी ले रहे हैं सारे, तो वो अपने हिसाब से लोगे ना।
जी,
किस्मत उसी को बोलते हैं। आपका लोटा छोटा है तो फिर हम क्या करें। एंड
चलो,
एनीवे
thank you
हैप्पी कि
so much, sir.
मुझे एक एक चीज जरूर कहना चाहूंगा, थोड़ा उसमें आपको अच्छा भी नहीं लगेगा, क्योंकि since I am the founder teacher and I've done so much for the college to make it an international institution and people recognize it. आपको नहीं पता होगा, मुझे तो बताते रहते हैं कि हमारे स्टूडेंट्स में प्राइड नहीं है कॉलेज का। इतने टूटे टूटे कॉलेज हैं, एसबीओ को बोलते हैं, उधर बोलते हैं अहमदाबाद, फलाहाबाद। आई कैन बेट एनी टाइम द बेस्ट ऑफ टीचर, द बेस्ट ऑफ आर्किटेक्ट्स मेरे साथ बात करा के दिखाओ। आई विल टेल यू कि उसको तो बेचारा कहीं घूम रहा है इधर। जैसे फ्रैंक गैरी को कह रहे, मैंने कहा इतना कंफ्यूज आर्किटेक्ट आज तक देखे नहीं मैंने, और आर्किटेक्चर का पता भी नहीं, बोलते जाते हैं और प्राइज भी ले रहे हैं, मेडल भी ले रहे हैं। आई कैन बेट ऑन दिस दैट मैनी जो मास्टर थोड़े से मैंने स्टडी किए उनको आता है, बाकियों को आता है भी नहीं, ऐसे बोलते जाते हैं। और हमने इतना कुछ सिखाया है, इतना एक्सपोजर इतना जबरदस्त है। कई तो बताते हैं जो थोड़े एडमायर करते हैं, वो कहते हैं सर आप वो बताते थे ये करो वो करो, अब समझ में आया क्यों कहते थे। और अब देखो लेटेस्ट जो ट्रेंड है, जो 78 में मैंने मेरा आर्टिकल छपा हुआ है टाइम्स ऑफ इंडिया में, उस वक्त ही मैंने कहा स्पेशलाइजेशन इज नॉट फॉर इंडियंस, वी आर होलिस्टिक पीपल। तो अब तो सारी दुनिया उधर को जा रही है, उसको जर्नलिस्ट बोलते हैं। एनीवे व्हाट आई एम सेइंग इज कि आप अपने कॉलेज का थोड़ा प्राइड बिल्डअप करने की कोशिश करो, और जो एलुमनाई हैं वही कर सकते हैं, दूसरे तो अपने चक्कर में रहते
Thank you, sir. I think we all are trying hard, and yes, we all are here. So majority today is CCA, but
हैं। हाँ
everyone is welcome because this is a topic for all artists,
हाँ
and I'm
हाँ,
sure everyone feels like that about their own college. So yeah. So I
लेट्स
think
हियर द अदर स्पीकर्स।
yeah, so we have with us another architect, Ms. Mamta Malhotra. She's an architect by profession. She lives in Varanasi and she trained at the Triveni Kala Sangam in Delhi. She has designed numerous interior and landscape design projects. Mamta received an honors certificate from the Royal Drawing Society in London. Her artwork is regularly featured in prominent publications in India and US. Mamta, please tell us more about your inspirations and how your work has evolved over the years. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Deepika. It's really an honor to be featured on this platform with Professor Bhatti and Naveen and Maya. It's really I'm truly honored to be here with all of you today. Let me share my screen. I hope you can hear me, and one second. Well, as Deepika just said, I'm Mamta Malhotra, an architect from Varanasi, and let's walk you through the journey from architecture to art that I have experienced. And I just like to mention that you can take architecture out of the artist, but eventually I always seem to end up with architecture. So the journey always seems to end up back in architecture. Let me tell you a little bit about my formative years. My childhood was spent mostly in beautiful landscapes like Kashmir, Sikkim, Bhutan, and just living in those spaces, I think, makes you very sensitive to beauty and sensitive to art. I was very fortunate in my family. They were very supportive. My father, though he was an army engineer who built airfields and roads, but he was also an artist who used to paint beautifully. So all our summer vacations were spent usually with lots of canvases and easels and paints and uncles and cousins, everybody recording the beautiful landscape around us. The next stop was in Chandigarh, where at the wonderful College of Architecture. And I'd like to really point out to Mr. Bhatti, who just mentioned this. I think I am very, very, very proud of the institution, because the teaching in CCA was informal but very effective, and I think it really opened up your mind, and you had a really open and inquisitive mind. So for that I would really like to thank CCA. The next stop was Triveni Kala Sangam. This was also a very fortuitous series of events that I landed there. I learned painting and sculpture under Mr. Rameshwar Bruta, Mrs. Shobha Bruta, and Pradeep Saxena used to teach us sculpture. And we used to share the studio with names like Vasundhara Tiwari. These were all students there at that time. Vasundhara Tiwari and Naresh Karpuria and Mrs. Saroj Jain. Then you were exposed to amazing art in the gallery at Triveni, because at that point, when they were not even so well known, Anjali Ila Menon and Jahangir Sabawala's works used to be. So I think it was an immense and beautiful exposure to world-class art over there. I think that really added to my understanding and learning in art. The next stop was Varanasi. And all of you know that it has an extremely rich history. And here are a few historical facts about the land of Shiva. It's the holiest of the Saptpuris, dating back to 800 BC, definitely, and even by some accounts, 1800 BC. It's where Jain Tirthankars, not the first, but two of the Jain Tirthankars were born here. It's a birthplace. Buddha, after he attained enlightenment, he gave his first sermon here. He preached his first sermon at Sarnath. So it's literally the birthplace of Buddhism. Adi Shankar established the worship of Shiva as a sect in the 8th century. Tulsidas wrote the Ramcharitmanas in 1574. Das, Sant Ravi Das, these are just a few of the names during the Bhakti movement. Guru Nanak's visit to Benares, he came here for a Mahashivratri, but it actually had a role in his founding Sikhism. So with all this wonderful history, and it's of course an educational and music center, and it's the home to the Benares Gharana. So all this rich cultural background has obviously had a very strong influence on my painting. This interaction of nature in Varanasi, the Ganges, religion as in Shiva's city, and humanity and culture creates a unique built environment. These timeless urban spaces, a unique riverfront, and a lifestyle that is still alive and vibrant, though very fragile. The architect in me reflects and interprets And the artist in me is inspired and creates. So these are some of a few of my works which are inspired by this beautiful riverfront. I believe this beautiful, vibrant energy of a rich culture that is translated into a unique architectural statement needs to be recorded, preserved, conserved for future generations. Some of my work contains Sanskrit shloks. I mean, some of my paintings, I always make sure to include some Sanskrit shloks, which celebrate the bond between Shiva, his Kashi, and Ma Ganga. I believe this epitomizes the vast store of knowledge and thought that has actually been developed on these very banks. And I'd like to pay homage to that. Next are the people of Varanasi. I'm very inspired by the people. I like to record what the people are like. They live, their lifestyle is still much closer to our culture and heritage, and they are much more respectful of the environment. I love to record these simple people and their simple lives. And here are some more of my paintings, whether it's the streets of Varanasi or the pool wali sitting outside a temple, or the diya sellers sitting on the banks of the river. I find all these extremely inspiring, and they've been the subject of my paintings a lot. Just to tell you about how timeless the Benares is, here's an excerpt from James Prinsep. Prinsep, for those of you who do not know or might not remember at this point, was the one who rediscovered Ashoka. He lived in Benares in 1820, and he describes scenes from Benares which talk about the flapping of pigeons' wings, the buzz of human voices, the temple bells ringing, the bathers on the ghats, the bulls in the streets, the twinkling of lamps on the ghats, and the funeral fires. If he was to come back here again, even after 200 years, which is exactly 200 years since the time he was here, he would find that very little has changed. And this timelessness is very appealing to me, and it's very fragile also. So I just would like to, here is a painting in which I've painted the people on the ghats of the Ganges. The festivals in Benares are colorful, vibrant, and still celebrated with a lot of joy. For example, Makar Sankranti is a festival which comes in the height of winter. The beautiful, colorful kites are all over the sky. Dev Deepavali is still celebrated with a lot of fervor, with lamps, oil lamps glittering on all the ghats. It's really a beautiful sight to behold. All these have been subjects of my paintings too. An effort to give visual form to my thoughts and feelings about Kashi with line, form, and color. Varanasi is a reflection of the human connect and reverence for nature, a real understanding of the delicate balance of the earth, her seasons, and her creatures. Benares, I've used even in abstract expressions of my feelings and thoughts about Benares. Also, I try to create functional art from waste. These art pieces that you see here, they are made from ply. It's shuttering ply that is wasted. It's end pieces of teak wood logs which are of no use. And everything has the motif of Benares interwoven in it, whether it's the flow of Ganga Ji in this one, and here we have shloks, we have dohas by Kabir Das written on this table, which again is an end piece from a teak log, which has been beautifully polished, because teak does take polish well, but otherwise it would just be wasted. It has been created into a functional piece. Here again, in homage to Buddha, these are also reminiscent of the Ganges. This is again an end piece of a teak log, ceramic pieces, waste paper, newsprint. recycled trunks, CDs, broken CDs, and plastic waste. Everything can be converted into art. And I made it, I've tried to, it's been an effort on my part to try and make things like that. I've also worked with local artisans. All of you probably know about the wooden toys that are made in Benares, and we have very talented artisans who work here. I got them to create these bowls for me, which I painted. So I tried to explore Varanasi from every angle. Another interesting interlude in my journey has been a visit, an art residency in China in Jingdezhang. This was, it's a ceramic city in a very, very remote part of China. This was an exceptional learning experience for me. I painted large and small ceramic pieces. And this tabletop, which you can see, it's quite a large table. It's, you know, like this kind of a size. It's a homage to Corbusier again. This again is to Benares and lots of other pieces. It was an exemplary learning experience. I've been fortunate, as I was just mentioning, to have shows at the Habitat Center, in the Visual Arts Gallery, at the Open Palm Court Gallery. This one was in New York at the Trump Tower. And I had an upcoming show, as I just mentioned, at the Jahangir Art Gallery, which I guess it's been postponed due to COVID, but it should happen soon. And I've been very fortunate that my shows have been accepted very well, and it's been very satisfying. The press as well as my viewers have been very kind to me. So this has been a part of my journey. Right now, ongoing shows, I have an online show. The Luxury Chronicle is doing a showcase of my work at the moment, which you can see online. Media, of course, a lot of my friends do know I have a Facebook page as well as Instagram. And Etsy, I have an Etsy shop. Mojato carries my work. And of course, there's my website, mamtamalhotra.com, where you can learn more about me and my work and my journey towards art.
In summary, Banaras is rooted in its traditions and faith. As the city moves towards urbanization, we should ponder on how best to maintain our essence and heritage while embracing the future and respecting nature. The key takeaway, as I see it, is that Varanasi is a fragile and precious gem of an urban space. I hope I have shown that the best minds in architecture need to be actively involved in its conservation, and the introduction of new elements needs to be considered carefully. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Excellent, Mamta. It's such a pleasure to see your work, and it shows that architect in the artist. I'm sure everyone felt that minute details is what perhaps an architect can foresee. Also, perhaps an artist also, but I think that advantage of being an architect and an artist shows in your work. I hope everyone agrees with what I'm saying, since most of us here are architects. So one can see that those little details in your work, which is so, so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
I told Mamta and many artists here, not many artists can do perspective properly. So she has the advantage of being an architect. The perspective is always right. This is a great advantage.
Yeah, so certainly
artists can't get it.
One can see that architect in your work.
Really amazing, because it is so complex. I wouldn't be able to do this in the whole life because I'm very impatient with my work. But she has done it, which means she has done it as a kind of meditation. Meditation to Lord Shiva.
I'm sure you can do a much better job. You're just being modest, but you are right. It's totally meditation. When I'm working, then I think all artists feel that way. When you're working, you forget about what is going on in the rest of the world. You're only focused on your canvas and your creativity.
But I think that's true for architects as well. Whenever they are conceiving, whenever we are actually, I was just thinking that when I'll be talking about the introduction, I just want to mention that most of us here are from that era where we design, we conceive in form of sketches. It's not a computerized concept. We all like to draw and sketch our thoughts, and that adds so much emotions that when you see these 3Ds, computerized 3Ds, they don't have those kind of emotions in them. It's only a piece of drawing. You know that it's a computer drawing, and whenever you see a sketch, preliminary sketch, it's full of whatever your thoughts, and everything has gone into that expression. So that is what I feel, that being an architect and an artist is a great advantage. And even in my last webinar on art and architecture, I mentioned that art is actually inherent in each and every individual, whether an architect or anybody else. It's just that we express it in different forms. Like we are now trained as architects, but somewhere there is some creativity in each and every one, each individual. So some kind of let it out as music, lyrics, or perhaps food, or dress designing, any which way. But when we actually think of fine art, it kind of combines with what architecture has taught us. So yeah, we'll come back to questions later and move on to the other panelists. And we have another well-known name from the architecture fraternity, and that is architect Naveen Vij from CCA, class of 82. And I'm very proud to say that I'm my batchmate. Am I right, Naveen? Naveen, which is a passionate for exploring allied fields like art, product design, sculpture, murals, etc. He also has a penchant for searching for innovative solutions for construction techniques, environmental issues, and furniture design. He has been running a design studio, which has grown into a painting studio along the way. Most of his art pieces go to adorn the structures and residences he designs. He has pioneered sketching and 3D visualization as an effective tool for communication of design. So over to you, Naveen. People who know you from college know that you are a born artist. You haven't acquired it. Your talent is something it is like inherent, what I was saying, it's inborn. And architecture came later basically as a technical study for you. So how would you explain your journey of being an artist and an architect, and where has the demarcation been drawn or fused together? So over to you.
Oh, thank you, Deepika. Thank you for those so kind words. I rarely come across them. Thank you so much. Really honored to be here in such august company. भट्टी सर से तो इतना कुछ सीखा है. आज ममता जी से भी बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिला. I learned a lot about the way the whole Varanasi has been absorbed into her taste and into her art. This is such a wonderful thing which has happened, and it is actually a learning process for me. I'm still learning. By the way, I'm still a very good student, and always on the lookout for something to learn. And Bhatti Saab, he sent me a document only recently, which was an amalgamation of what he thought of the architectural education, and a little insight into how it should be in future. It was such an absorbing document that I have still to reply back to him, because I couldn't do it in 4 days. I wanted to absorb the whole thing nicely and then revert back to him. He may be a little offended that I have not replied to him. So this is a preemptive move to put him to rest, because the document is so wonderful, sir, that I don't want to give it a non-serious thought. So please bear with me for some more time, and I'll definitely get back to you on that. So having said that, let me start my little presentation with a. Let's have the first slide.
Yeah.
No, this is not the slide. Slide 1. it's written down there. Yeah. So let me start with a little insight into, because since you asked me how the journey began, my journey starts like everybody else's, with my home and my school. I was lucky enough to have a set of parents and grandparents who proved to be great motivators for me. I remember my mother announcing my small art achievements to my father as soon as he was back from work, and he would be so enthused about it that he always would ask me to, okay, repeat it in front of him. I don't know why he did that, but he was all the time, sitting next to me and watching me how I drew it. And then eventually when the end product was prepared, he used to, make me march to my grandfather. He was an appreciator of sorts. He would first look at the thing, then he would put a hand into his pocket, take out some money and give me an award, right there and then. And then he would call my grandmother and announce to her that, oh, he's done something very wonderful, you must see. She would not come, but she would say, okay, now let me prepare some kheer or halwa, in celebration. So this was the usual, set of encouragement I received. And only, going along, this enabled me, to this combo was so potent that it always spurred me on to practicing more and more. And, eventually I would, even in my classroom, I would, try to impress my friends with, little sketches of cars, planes, ships. And they were always drawn on the side of the notebooks, the margins. And I was often ridiculed by my teachers, कि ये क्या कर दिया, सारा खराब कर दिया तूने. You don't know how to maintain your notebooks and all. So that is the way it happened, and it all started with that. And okay, now this is an interesting slide. I would just point out a case in point. My father and my uncle, they built their houses when I was about 9 years old, and those were typical houses, they were twin houses, very similar looking, with a central driveway. And my father told me that okay, draw a sketch of these two houses together, how we see it. And he had told me, a general line in perspective. I don't know where it came from to him. He said that जो पास की चीज है वो बड़ी होती है और जो दूर की होती है वो छोटी होती है. It starts looking smaller to us. And keeping this in mind, I somehow concocted a way of looking at the building. But then when we were practicing it out, my father, the number one sketch which you see, my father said that this house would look like this to me. This is the perfect view of the house. And I started contradicting him. I told him that this is not looking absolutely all right to me somehow. It is looking, both the sides cannot go to, in various directions. Halanki, technically he was right, because wo dur ja rahi hai to wo choti ho rahi. But then I made a sketch in front of him, which was number 2. I told him this is the kind of, view we would get. And he said, no, this right side is looking very, it's too big and, yahan distorted lag raha hai. And then eventually we settled for this sketch, which is number 3. Unknowingly that, okay, then the 1 point perspective came into being for the first time in my life. And this was a solution. This was non-controversial. And I made a sketch, which he preserved for so many years, and I have lost it now, but that was a sketch, which was hanging in the corridor of our house, for so umpteen years, till I went to the architecture school. So this was my first foray into, art and some perspective making. Then there's another slide. Now in this chapter, I called it a chapter. That is how, when I started to become an, architect. A small artist I was. And then when, I entered the architecture school in Chandigarh, I was a little on a higher tide than maybe rest of the guys, because I had done something before that, before entering the school. Uh, my sense of visualization was a little better. I could understand construction faster, building construction faster. Then I had an interest in writing and, history and all those things. And it was a nice concoction. I never seen a, history book of architecture. I mean, none of us would have at that time. But I was so fascinated with this big book, by Sir Fletcher. I still remember it. I still have it in my, studio. And it was so fascinating. I used to read it like a story book. तो वो हिस्ट्री का एग्जाम होता था हमारे, आई थिंक टिल द थर्ड ईयर वी हैड हिस्ट्री. And history, which my group of 7-8 friends, the 15 or 20 minutes before the exam, I gave them a summary of a lecture, and that is how they all got through. And that was good enough. I had summarized it, and I had concocted it in such a manner. I was so interested in it. So I still urge all people who come as interns into our office and other younger architects. I ask them always, which is your favorite subject? These days, everybody tells me it is design, and I start wondering, how you can be a designer unless you have a little interest in history, a little interest in geography, a little interest in other things. So that is what bewilders me, and I am sure this has something to do with the present curriculums or the architectural education we have these days. Mr. Bhatti and I were discussing it the other day, and we are both so concerned, I would say, about it, that we are planning to do something about it together. I would request him, soon, that we will start as soon as some better days are here. We will definitely start something about it. So, my Mamaji was an architect, and he was an architect from the same school as Dr. Bhatti was, from JJ School of Architecture, Mumbai. And he started giving me professional work, when when I used to visit my hometown in, during the summer vacation and all. And he got perspectives made from him, made from me, and, those were shown to clients. And he kind of started using my talent, to good effect. And I was so enthused by it, then the real, when I was in maybe the third year or so, I started doing professional perspectives for many architects in Chandigarh and, a few in Ludhiana. I still remember, I won't name them, but, a commercial architectural firm in Ludhiana was, even when I shifted after my passing out, after my graduation, I came to Delhi. And I was, I had started to make perspectives here, for various architects. The guys in Ludhiana they started missing me. They would, every now and then, they would ring me up and tell me कि यार कैसे करना है इसको, ये तो हम बड़ा वो आदत डल गई है हमें, we are addictive. Then what happened? They were very clever and very clever guys, very smart operators. They used, in those days, even the courier service was not to that good an effect, and they used to send a man, every Friday or Saturday to fetch the perspectives back to Ludhiana. I told them, how you do, what was the brief? I asked them, what is to be made? They never gave me drawings. They stopped giving me drawings, for wo mere ko batate the, it is a, 1 canal plot. This is the size. And the guy needs 3 bedrooms and a nice living, dining, this and that. Make something fantastic. I told them that something fantastic was made last week also. Then they said, we don't know. Then you make something bombastic. These were the only 2 words, they used for the brief. So I used to, and I was happiest when I did not want to see the drawings and make a perspective out of my fancy. It was the easiest for me. वो drawing पढ़ने में मेरे को ज़्यादा time लगता था जी. So I used to make that perspective. The guy used to carry it back. They used to take out 3 photographs of them and print them in a larger size and frame them up. One photograph was sent to the client. And he said, oh, mera ghar aisa lagega. He said, done, approved. Then another photograph was kept in their studio for their master draftsman. I would say master because they were very clever people operating at that time, That master draftsman would go the other way around. He would now concoct a plan looking at the perspective, And it would be, we call it reverse engineering, I call it reverse architecture, So that plan was made looking at the, perspective. And the third one was sent to the mistri at site. In those days, we had wonderful craftsmen mistries, on site, Punjab mein especially, those Sardar mistries were so good. He would look at the plan, the sent plan, he would look at the perspective, and he would say, Bauji, unna bana langa. And the building would come up just like the perspective was, There were no elevations, no nothing, and everything was done with those three, prints of the same perspective. So this was an interesting journey. It went on for quite some years, 8-9 saal ye cheez chali, and I'm so happy. I mean, happy in the sense that it gave me utmost satisfaction, when these things were done to that effect. And then now let me tell you how, as an artist, how it has impacted my, sense of architecture or my practice or whatever I did in architecture. This is, I would call it that, I had stopped thinking in 2D. By default, it came to me that I had, because of this use of the sketch and the perspective, I had stopped visualizing in 2D, It was seemingly a little, useless thing to me. I started visualizing in 3D. And the effect was that there was a sense of sculpture which I could make. I did not get satisfied with the flat elevation or, something like that. Then I used to sculpt out, and then, fight for, okay, ye FAR kharab ho raha hai, ye ho raha hai. But when they used to look at the sketch, they said, yaar, bhaad mein gaya FAR, tum banao, aise hi banao, ye bahut sundar lag raha hai, like that. I got that advantage because of that sketch. People were tending to forget about their covered areas and FARs because of this sculpted thing, So this gave me, I'll show you 2-3 slides. Yeah, this was another one. It was flat. Then I made this 3-story dugout in there. And then, to salvage some of the area, there was another hanging bar, which got put into it and it added to the sculpture. So these were sculpture building. Even this, this is a project we did for Char Bagh in Srinagar, although it didn't get constructed. This was Char Bagh is a small area, before the Dal Gate. And there was this, they wanted to make a tourist info center there, with a very ethnic quality, they would call it. And then this was another small house. And it had nothing, I had nothing to play. So, the sense of sculpture, it just prompted me to project this thing out there, as an upper story. And in order to increase the height of that big void, I put the slab at the parapet top, so that it would constitute about 14-15 feet. And then it, came out. All these things were so helpful because of that intrinsic value of sketching and, visualizing in 3D. That is why I urge, even in the modern age, when there are so many, computerized renderings and all, but how to reach that point, this sketching is a must. It is a stepping stone to reach the computer rendering, I would say. You cannot visualize, Deepika was so right when she mentioned that our era used to depend so heavily on this, still the paper and the pen. And I love it that way still. And I find it more useful that way still. Although we are onto computers, we do all the things on computers also. This is, for example, a computer generated thing. But the conception is always on that paper. Okay, then there were some, adventurous things I could try out because I was an architect. I could try out. There was a jeweler company in Delhi, and they said that, okay, we want, there was one word brief from them. They said, you will get the project only if you make a building like an ornament, like we sell our ornaments. That is our brief, that is our USP, and we want to project it. Now, reaching that point, I, made a few sketches of the same building. These are all sketches of the same building. They are different concoctions of the same building, but each one of them delayed the finalization by 1 week because each one was them a debatable thing. I put them into confusion so much. I loved it. The whole household was, sitting there, 3, 4 brothers and all their, younger siblings, and they would, well, the modern little, younger people would say, oh, we want a little modern, and the older one would say, let it be total ornament, and this debate continued. But the brief was ornament. And these were all sketches in case in point, where we tried to show them various things. uh, yeah, and then eventually, slide 10. Yeah, so eventually we landed up with this elevations. This was the front side and this was the side, longer side. It was a corner plot. And what happened now, you will wonder, I did not create all this. The Sir J.J. Fletcher book that created this perspective. All these, are sketches borrowed from that book, scanned them out, sat with my draftsman, made him convert them into 2D projections with plus minuses. Then we got hold of somebody from Banaras, a team from, Vrindavan, Banaras, who used to do temple, decorations and architecture in plaster. All this is made in plaster, and we made them sit there. And I took, like half a thing. We took 1:1 printouts on the plotter, and they used to, make their own, templates according to that, and then fit them, and they did a wonderful job. And this building still it's existing in Karol Bagh. So I was so happy, okay, this was one freak thing. It is not my kind of, architecture, but I was happy that being an artist, I could at least, bring a nice response to their expectations. This was the only satisfaction I had, from this building. Then, of course, some buildings like classical buildings or temple buildings, they are very difficult to draft in 2D. I remember, doing major drawings of Khajuraho temples once we were there. Although उसको तो बस सारी मस्ती ही करके आए. But those major drawings were so difficult, we couldn't even complete one patta of it. It was so intricate and so complex. So I find that these kind of concepts can be well explained in sketches. You make a sketch, at least you get a sense of scale and proportion, how high the shikhra is, what is the total scale of the thing. And this is a the Mata Vaishno Devi complex. We were asked to do some schematic because it's a very difficult site to there's no space to construct there, and drawings are not there, and you cannot make a drawing because it is such a steep slope. It's almost a 70-degree. I did my thesis by the way based on this. So I showed them, and they asked me to do a concept drawing of okay, what can be projected and what can be made. So sitting there across the this thing, the forest in between, I made this sketch there, and then this was presented to the governor of J&K, and he really appreciated. He saw the possibility of it for the first time, although still it is not being made because it is now so overcrowded that it is so difficult. They cannot attempt to start constructing it. It is such a complex thing. Then, of course, another aspect of being a artist architect was that in hilly areas, the sloping roof is a complex thing. It cannot be worked out properly in 2D drawings. Elevations are very deceptive as far as sloping roofs are concerned. So the sketch comes in handy very nicely there. There are more slides to it. Sorry. Yeah, so we can do that, the sloping roofs, we can work out, accordingly. And then there were, of course, those, working drawings. Now, a complex working drawing, like in these sectional perspectives you can see, or a cutaway sketch you can see. Now this is a typical sketch of a water tank, Mamti area on the right side. It was very difficult to understand कि ये सीढ़ी कहाँ खत्म होगी, फिर इसके अंदर कितनी हाइट मिलेगी, फिर वाटर टैंक आएगा, वाटर टैंक के ऊपर कैसे चढ़ना है मैनुअल खोलने के लिए, all those things, all in a very straight line, streamlined, small box of the Mamti area, you can say. And then once this cutout was made, it explained quite a few things to even the contractor. Let me tell you, this is another aspect of Indian architecture. We architects are trained, but the people who construct our buildings, they are absolutely from the dehat, they are from the villages. Hats off to those workers, because they are farmers as well as technicians. Where can you find such a rare combination? And those guys come and work on our buildings. Or koi painter hai, koi electrician hai, koi plumber hai, and they go back to their fields and do the agriculture also. So unko samjhane ke liye what I find, a sketch comes in as the best, because वो बेचारा 2D की drawing पहले तो उसको पता ही नहीं है 2D की drawing, फिर उस पे वो English में dimensions, English में वो literature लिखा हुआ है, वो कैसे समझेगा? Then they sketch and I do the working drawings. That is how I make my buildings. I don't make now. I've stopped making 2D drawings. I depend on my little diary or notebook, which is always with me. I carry that to the side. वहीं पे उसको दिखाता हूँ बना के, उसको कहता हूँ आप तो कैमरे से इसकी फोटो खींच ले, and that is the print with him, and he follows that. And even I get revised. I revise my process, and whenever he asks a question when I'm away, I can easily answer it. So that's an advantage I get. Even in complex, we can nicely cut away drawings jo hoti hain, unme we can nicely present the interior spaces. Then yeah, interiors are actually the curvilinear interiors, especially the classical interiors especially. अब उसकी 2D drawing जब हम बनाते हैं, it becomes a very messy and complex affair. A simple sketch and it does the whole thing. Then you can even, if you make a 2D drawing after this, a reflected ceiling plan or a layout plan, it is so understandable, and you get away with it very nicely. So then there was this aspect of seeing your sketch turning into reality. This is one of the greatest satisfactions one has. So this was a sketch made for a Gurgaon house for a builder, right? उन्होंने मेरे को brief दिया कि we want a, because everything is being made in Singapore style architecture, modern, sub-modern, whatever we call it. So let us make a classical kind of a building which may sell, which may fetch us more. And believe you, this was about 1.5 times the normal market price they got it, because of this little inundations done in the in the sculpture itself. We tried to project it like a Florence or a Venice house, and it was a nice experience, turning it into reality. These are again some hill, I was talking about those roofs of sloping roofs. And sitting at the site, if you sketch out, these things, and then you work out the roof sitting there, and then actually architecture happens at the site. The studio में कुछ इसका बनता नहीं है जी, ये तो site पे when you're sitting there, you happen to sketch it out. You can feel the scale. You can relate it to some surrounding tree or some lamp post, and you actually do the main thing there only. I find it. Then there were some, we were having I was asked by a corporate office to, there was a brainstorming team sitting, across a table, and, some of them were designers, fashion designers, they wanted to combine all the designers and create something, very fanciful. Now, making concepts, asking some architect to make a concept, presenting it would have delayed, and then, getting hold of all those people together was a very difficult task. So we did a 2-day workshop there in their conference room. So I was sitting there with my pen and paper and pencil sketches, and we all made all these sketches what they were trying to project, and I was assimilating them and trying to convert it into 3D sketches. It was a very thin linear building, but those 4 things, and we were done in one day only, and that was the beauty of it. We really loved the way it came out. Now, down this journey, then eventually, after some gray hair and, some years, the architect became an artist, and then the whole thing started reflecting in my paintings. For example, I couldn't escape that initially, and these were some, I used to call the upper one, you see in that slide, it was called Metro Savan, and the lower one was also no different from it. And it started reflecting, even the sky, the building, they were all cubicle boxes and all those things. And I derived a sense of, nice satisfaction. I called it my kind of an abstract, later on. Then I did a series recently on, zodiac signs. When they are converted into spaces, what would they mean to me, at least, So some, the Linda Goodman book came in handy, some traits from there. And, then I tried to convert these into spaces. For example, this one is an Aries, and here's the steps, and upwards, like that, and over positive people, So this was my reflection of it. Of course, you can feel the architecture in it, This was, Taurus, very sturdy and, very balanced and, composed and, strong, and then, very stable. The pyramid denotes the stability, and then the columns, and then security, and then the love for outdoors. All this was, projected. This was, one of Gemini. These were the twin sisters, the symbol of Gemini, the twin sisters in two different directions, again, converted into architecture. And then this was the Cancerian. This was a magnanimous, people, with a very generous heart, and, surrounded by, every, and even a slightest pebble into their, surrounding can cause ripples, like that, So I tried to, then this was the Leo. If wherever you lead it to, you have to have a red balcony to announce, this is the king style. So this is the Leo. Then this was the Virgo. Virgos were, very playful, and, they like, I mean, they were the calculators and the estimators of the world, so hardworking people, intriguing, and, puzzle solvers, basically, so all those. And this was the Libra. I tried to convert these into, whatever sense I could make out, from, their traits. Then, of course, this street, I call it coexistence. It's any typical street, but, my architecture gets reflected into my paintings. This is what I want to try to, wanting to try to tell you. The left side is the Hindu houses, the right side is kind of Muslim houses, and who knows, where the each balcony is entering into the other one, and then there's a common street. We cannot escape this reality, whatever we may say about it. We cannot escape.
ചെറിയൊരിതില്ലേ കൊതു അടിച്ചേക്കും മുട്ടേനെ കൊണ്ട് കൊതു തലയിലൊക്കെ വന്നിരിക്കുന്നുണ്ട് എന്നാ കൊതു അടിച്ചാണ്
So you can say. Yeah. So now this is my present state, the architect and the architect fuse. And it is in continuity, and the artist fuse, and it is in continuity, I don't know where it is leading to, but of course, some thoughts about it, I can share it with you. I have something in my mind, going beyond these benchmarks, I've written a little statement which might be of use to all of us. Going beyond these benchmarks of art and architecture, I feel that it is time to be accountable to humanity as far as my experiences go, so as to benefit one and all. Some thoughts on environment, architectural education, and documentation of architectural processes, etc., are scurrying around in my mind. So let us hope Lord Almighty, gives me a chance to do something worthwhile in this direction too. That's all. Thank you so much. Thank you for being so patient with me, for hearing me out.
Thank you, Naveen. That was actually wonderful. We wanted each one of your presentations. I wanted it should continue. It was so engrossing to see your journey well, part of it, I'm glad that we witnessed to your all this artwork, but never had a chance to tell you that Naveen, ye hamare liye bhi perspective bana do.
The pleasure was always mine. It will always be mine.
So yes, that was wonderful, and all architects here can see that how nicely the presentations were, and how I'm sure if there are younger ones here, because a lot of them I wouldn't be knowing, but how perspectives can actually change your concepts, and it's so easy to explain to the client, you know, that this is what it is, and you don't need anything other than that. Then drawings come later for construction, perhaps at the site.
Very important, but yes, you can, make that initial dent with the perspective or the sketch.
Yeah, so that was great, and the watercolors and the effects in watercolors are amazing.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So yeah, we'll. I think a lot of questions would be there. I'm sure I'm getting so many comments in the chat for each one of you. So we'll go later. So we have one last guest speaker who came on board very late. Otherwise, her name would have been there on the banner. And I'm so happy that she said it herself that she wants to be part of it, because by her being here, I'm very happy we have equal representations, 2 men and 2 women. So I'm not partial to anyone. So yeah, last but not the least, keeping a balanced representation, we have with us a surprise guest speaker who's an architect from Trivandrum, architect Maya Gomez. Maya is an architect and planner with an interest in education, art, and design. She has worked in India and Singapore, and currently runs a private practice in Trivandrum. Her work, Participatory Design Aid, won the National Award from the IIA in 2002 in the research category. Her practice, Gomez and Associates Architects, also won the State Award from the IIA in 2014 for the design of a school campus. Today, she will share a few of her works where she combines her architectural concepts and skills to create a piece of art. Over to you, Maya.
Thank you so much, Deepika. And I must say, I really am in awe of all the presentations that have happened. And I'm so happy to be a part of this. I'm so proud, in fact, and honored to be a part of this lovely gathering. The wisdom of Mr. Bhatti, the beautiful detailing that Mamta brings to her work in the perspectives of Varanasi, and Mr. Naveen's amazing artwork and perspectives and all the rest. So I am just going to move very quickly into my seemingly very mediocre presentation now compared to what we've seen so far. But thank you nevertheless, Deepika, for this chance. I'll just do a screen share quickly. Okay, so I hope this is on your screen. To begin with, let me just quickly go into this recent painting that I've done. This painting is called The City by the Beach. And the city by the beach because Trivandrum has a beach which is called Shangamugam. Shanga means conch, of course. I think it's the same in Hindi and Sanskrit. And Mukham means face. So literally it is conch face. And that is the name of the beach. So I started this off with a conch. And I didn't know how it was going to evolve, of course. But then the spiral of the conch then happened to form the thread that connected or form the base for the entire composition. So if you can see the spiral of the conch spiraling out, and that's how the whole composition evolved. And for me, composition, I would think, is key. You know, art in a lot of ways informs design, and design in a lot of ways, design thinking elevates art to a great extent, because design thinking gives us that thread, that theme, that thread of connectivity that we are looking for to bring our art some meaning, you see. Because when you talk of design thinking, it's about editing your work and bringing about things that really count. Why do you have to have a certain element where it is? Why do you have to have a certain element depicted in a certain way? There has to be a reason and a rhyme and a reason behind whatever you do. And I really think that composition is a key to the arts, be it visual, be it literary. Mr. Bhatti had spoken of the three art forms. Sorry, one second, I've lost my. Okay, so the three performing, literary, and visual. So until you have, am I audible? Yeah. So until you have the connecting key of composition, which is what has elevated the works of, say, like architects like Corbusier, like Baker, because they were artists first and foremost. How you compose a space, what do you see? How do you take the elements of art, which are line, form, texture, or color, or how do you take the elements of architecture, which could be light, proportion, space, perspective, and what you see, solid and void. How do you take these elements and bring them together in a harmonious composition that is meaningful, that serves a purpose? So now moving on to my next slide, what do I do? Okay. Yeah, and these are just some of the details. So that's how the conch comes about, the buildings at the side. You can see the paddy fields there. And this is my city. This is Trivandrum. So there's the temple around which the city is built, and the Karamana River. And you can see a train line in the background. That's the Karamana River. There's a little pond. It's a city, and the beautiful scenes of the boats on the horizon, which is what the city by the beach is all about. And the seven hills. It's a city of seven hills. So the seven hills are also depicted there, as well as some of the major buildings that you see in the city. Now, we also I've started an art club during the pandemic. It's a WhatsApp group where we have a theme a week, and we work to a theme a week. So it's a mixed group of young and old. And 1 week, the theme happened to be black and white. So these are some of the quick sketches that were done for that theme. And this happened to be one of the sketches. So I started off with a conch, and this is how this whole thing about Trivandrum, this whole painting evolved. When you come to mural art in Kerala, usually the protagonists are gods and goddesses, and they're very highly ornamented. But here I chose a very common folk theme of fisher folk. And the ornamentation happens not on them, but in the nature around them. So I thought that was a new way of looking at mural art. I've also done a few other themes in keeping with the Kerala theme of the Malayali kitchen, Poontotam, traditional flowers that are used during Onam. This is the Tiruvadra dance, which is usually a very formal, stately kind of dance. But here the women are in gay abandon, their hair let loose. So it's like a Matisse, he's done the 5 dances with their hands and full of a take on that. I've also looked at, when you look at medium, when you look at acrylic paint, it's a very opaque medium. It's very opaque, and I like to not be too gimmicky in my work. I like to be very straightforward in the application for medium. So when you use flat boxes of color that acrylics demand, unless you're going to do a lot of glazes on them, I prefer to work in one layer. So then one way of breaking it up would actually be using grids and using some kind of breaking up the form. And that's what I've tried with this series of paintings, which are, which generally depict various themes. The previous one was called Still I Rise. This one is Sunrise, which is done with just 3 colors, the primary colors and gold. That's the silver moon. This is a painting called Where Do You Go to My Lovely? It's again a woman who you don't really know much about. It's a beautiful old song I'm sure most of you would have heard. It was featured by Jeremy Clarkson in Top Gear, incidentally, when he featured the Fiat 500. This was the background song that he used. And these are some more, geometric depictions. This could be a street, a busy street. It's actually called Omasitando after the shopping street in Japan. It's got some metallic colors in it and a certain rhythm and pattern, something like a Broadway boogie woogie by Piet Mondrian. And this was done after the architect's IIA trip to Dubrovnik, and so it just depicts the interesting roofs that you see there. And in the art club, one of the themes for the week was pride. Now, how do you depict such a sensitive theme? So how do you depict something that, so again, it comes to how you handle a theme. So I thought of the ostrich because the ostrich is an animal that tends to hide its head in the sand, but think its whole body is hidden. So I've depicted the gender stereotypes, pink and blue, as the two ostriches at the back with their heads in the sand. And the ones who have broken out of the gender stereotypes, that the multicolored ones are the ones with the strut in front. And to the right of your screen, it's Arjuna and Brihanala. So of course there was a conflict there with Arjuna and Brihanala and the feminine form of his, and how he shoots the arrow. If you notice, the reflection of the fish is actually the heart of the reflection. And watercolor is a totally different medium, as you all know, and so what allows you to build up on transparency and to use these beautiful transparent layers and create layers and layers and layers of effects. And this is also a medium that I sort of enjoy working with because it has more freedom, more spontaneity than acrylics, which are a little more difficult to work with. The Munar Hills, these are called The Hills Are Alive with the Sound of Music. And these are the depictions of Kathakali. The patterning was done with pencil on watercolor base, on a watercolor wash. And these are called channeling the gods, because essentially the dancers are supposed to become the gods that they're depicting. They're supposed to become, whoever they are depicting. And so the lines that go out from the headgear, the lines that go out from the patterns of their face, all these sort of connect, and it's like channels of the gods. And during the pandemic, I came up with a series of 3 paintings. So in the first one, if you see, this is also watercolor on watercolor. So all the patterning is done in watercolor itself on a watercolor base. And the first one, the focus is on the mask, which is in green, of course. And there's the conflict, which is shown through a cubist kind of thing of looking inwards, looking outwards. There is a conflict, and you can see the 2 hands with the soap bubbles and this obsession with being clean that we all went through the initial stages of the lockdown. And in the second one, you see how you start eating. You become a consumer. You're starting to eat. You're locked up at home. You're starting to consume, to buy more things, to stock up. And of course, the mask moves to the eyes because you're oblivious to what happens outside, right, in the outer world. And in the third one, in fact, if you look at the green of the mask and the skin tone, they've reversed. So the mask becomes the face and the face becomes the mask. So we don't know where it begins and where it ends. Yeah? Then on a lighter note, you need a little bit of whimsy as well. So that's an elephant with a mask. And this is also watercolor on watercolor, and this is called Settlement. And it's 5 different houses or buildings along the periphery, and you see the paddy fields in the outside, and then a little bit of a water element. So this kind of, it was a rather intricate process of detailing, and I enjoyed this. I thought it had a little bit of a stained glass kind of effect to it. This is also patterning in watercolor. These were done again in the art club on the theme sun. So how you depict the sun, and so these were some of the watercolors again that I came up with. This is also on the theme sun. This is also, these are tiny little ones which we used cut off edges of papers that were painted, and then you cut off the edges. And I used all those, put them all together. I too do love recycling and not wasting any bits and pieces. And I find even the edges that you discard are so pretty in their own way when you've used watercolor. So I use all of that and try to put them all together. This was a gate design that I did recently. So I drew out this, it was during the pandemic. So I drew out this on graph paper. And I remember about 20 years ago, I had done a boutique which had 3 large windows. It's in Showara Beach, which is a very busy tourist place. So I'm sure if anyone, if you've gone there or going to go there, there's a boutique called Classic Gallery. It's a double height boutique. And they had these 3 long windows. And I had done one as a tree of life, one as a peacock, and one as, I think, a lotus. And these were the days before phone cameras and all that, so I don't really have pictures of them. But those days, you could get grill guys to actually replicate these kind of floral designs very easily. But nowadays, everyone is doing these square bars and rods and straight things. It's very difficult to get them to do it. Anyway, I found an older grill person who said, yes, he can do it. He'll do it for me in flats. But he took the drawing with him and he disappeared. And then I had to call him up and say what's happened. And then he said, see, I can't get an artist to do it in 1:1. Okay, so then I said, okay, you bring your whatever sheet along and I'll do it for you in 1:1. So I sat at the ground, took a big scale and did it in 1:1. And then I thought, okay, let's see what he comes up with. So apparently this is what he finally did. And that's how the gate finally looked. And it was a pretty good replica. He went with the bars directly above the drawing and he came up with this. And I was with him as well at the workshop. It was nice process. I'm sure there are tons of gate designs that we can always take off the net or somewhere now, or his books and catalogs and ask him to do. But then I tend to like doing this kind of silly thing, wasting my time on all this. And this is how my life goes on. And a small one. These are the paintings that I've done over the years. I haven't been painting for very long. In fact, I've been drawing and sketching for very, very long, as long as I can remember. But I had this exhibition recently where I put up all these works. And keeping in theme for the season, this one is the 12 Days of Christmas, starting with, the stimulated song about the partridge and the pear tree. So that's what I'm going to end with. And I would also like to add that, I really believe that architects who are artists, like all of you, have a definite advantage in terms of understanding, because unless we do with our hands, it's very difficult for us to get a grasp over certain elements that we talk about and how compositions are formed. It's also nice to copy the masters, but then if you're just copying blindly, and your skill is good, your technique is good, and you can copy blindly, but you're not getting anything out of it, there is really no point in doing it. You should see what you're going to be gaining from that, some certain process, some certain way of applying paint, so intelligently copy so that you learn, because everything is of course being done before, but you can copy intelligently so that you learn. And with that, I would like to end my presentation. Thanks again, Deepika.
Thanks, Maya. It was really nice. And thank you for kind of telling me that you are an artist so that I could bring you over. I wish I had known it earlier and put your name right in the beginning. And anyways, we've still been able to look at your work and know your talent. So it's excellent. Again, the same story that how being an architect, perhaps it's both ways. Being an artist helps being an architect and vice versa. Being an architect helps being an artist as well, as can be seen in each and everyone's work. So yeah. So any questions from anyone, please, for any one of the panelists? Otherwise, I think as a concluding remark, each one of the panelists, I'll request to just talk briefly about today's architects as artists, maybe a one line or two lines on of your thoughts on this webinar, and then we'll end from there. I think no questions. Everyone is dumbfounded, though we all are architects, but looking at so much work, excellent work today in one go, it's like, visiting a mecca of art. So I think, sir, I would request you to start. Dr. Bhatti, sir. Sir, can't see.
His mic is on mute.
Sir, can you unmute?
I think this is quite a thrilling kind of exposure, saying that young people, relatively young, not very young, but relatively young people are doing so much in art. It reinforces my conviction that man became an artist before he became anything else, because 60,000 years we have proof of how even the caveman could paint. In other words, what you young people have summed up, I have already theorized it into something else. There are four major fields of human endeavor: the humanities, art, science, and technology. To understand these, I have developed four tools: theory, practice, research, and pedagogy. Unless you know these tools, you can't explore these four fields. Of course, culture and religion is there always. If you do that, I think you will almost automatically become an artist. You can't be anything else. God has made you an artist because He is the greatest artist ever. So if you use that first discover that divine endowment in you and then develop it, that is the best form of meditation. Going to the temple is not meditation. Doing what God has given you, developing it as a gesture of gratitude, is really art. Everything else is very, very secondary. Whatever you have been telling, I think is present in everyday's life, in everyone's life, because the child learns to draw the devils on the wall, and you fume at him. You are spoiling the walls, but he is expressing what he has got. Everyone has got that. I think the greatest painter has been Picasso, who told this in very beautiful lines. There is a big book that he has written. He says, it took me 4 years to paint like Raphael. Raphael was a central master. But it took me a whole lifetime to paint like a child. Just imagine that. Which means when you are painting, you are not bothered about whether someone will like it or not. It is an expression of emotion. It expresses emotion, it does not evoke emotion. If you are evoking emotion, then you are trying to sell it. Then you will play to the gallery and art will be all gone. Of course, you will earn money and name and all that, but that is not art. Art is the most intimate expression of human experience as it is encountered in everyday life. And I think Maya has done the things in that way. The first painting was most beautiful. And I'm amazed how Mamta has a whole gallery of such wonderful work. एंड नवीन विज का तो मैंने आपको एक चीज बतानी थी, वो इसने नहीं बताई. When he was in the second year, Professor Chatterjee and I taught graphics and sculpture, and we found that he was very child prodigy, like you would say. I was then starting with my master's research on the rock garden, and I wanted the measured drawing of it. But to begin with, I needed some reference plan. So I told him, this was by instinct, that he would be able to do it. I told him to go there and climb on the wall and take a move and sketch whatever you see. He brought it back to me, which was a base plan. Then I took it over and I spent the next 18 months making the drawings. And I found to my great surprise that what he had sketched was right. No, even measured, when we measured it, it came out to be almost there. That is his, I didn't know his background, but I found that he was a child prodigy. The perspective thing is talking the best thing he has not told you. I found that he could do perspectives in second year. So I introduced him to some clients. And the best client was from the army. A brigadier, he said, would you do this for me? I told him that I have a student who does it better than I can do. He says, okay. So he was given an assignment. It was a wonderful job he did. I asked him to tell the man to pay him. तो वहाँ हम फोन कर रहे थे लॉबी, वहाँ जो प्रिंसिपल के स्टेनो बैठते थे ना, वहाँ टेलीफोन कर रहे. He was with me. मैंने कहा ब्रिगेडियर साहब ये सारा अच्छा है, इसको पैसे दो. He says कितने पैसे देने. मैंने इसको फोन पकड़ा दिया. मैं कहा फोन पकड़ो और बताओ कितने पैसे. तो he was trembling, नर्वस था. इसने वो बिजनेस थोड़ी किया था. कहते सर मेरे से नहीं होना, आप बताओ जितने चाहिए. मैं कहा मुझे क्या पता कितने चाहिए, इसको भूल गया होगा शायद. मैंने पता नहीं फिर बताया 2000 या कितना वटेवर. वो कहता ठीक है जो आप कहोगे दे देंगे. उसको दे दिए. So he sold his first perspective like that. Like I sold my first painting at 50 rupees in Bombay. वो करना थे तो मैंने कैलेंडर से एक नकल मार के बनाई थी, वोमन बेदिंग, ऐसा बहुत ही अच्छी बनी हुई थी. तो वो कहने लगे कि शी लुक्स लाइक माय वाइफ, आई वुड लाइक टू बाय द पेंटिंग. मैंने कहा ले लो फिर. तो उसने मुझे 50 रुपए दे दिए. 50 रुपए का मतलब आजकल 5 लाख का होगा. तो मैंने कहा ले लो. What I'm trying to say is that मुझे ये नहीं सरप्राइजिंग लग रहा है कि आप आर्टिस्ट हो. वो तो मुझे लगता है भी होना ही चाहिए. नहीं हुए तो तब सरप्राइज लगेगा. काफी लोग ऐसे हैं जो नहीं होते. सरप्राइज ये लग रहा है कि it took us so long a time to discover each other के ये भी हो रहा है, क्योंकि हम तो उल्टा सीधा कुछ और ही देखते रहते हैं. सास बहू and everything else. Maya,
No need.
I have one suggestion to my students. You don't look very
No
old,
need,
so
no
you can be my student on the,
No need.
I think in a formal way. I was suggesting that if they are willing to invest, I can write a book on your work, architects and artists. बहुत ही वंडरफुल बुक हो सकती है, लेकिन आपको पैसे थोड़े तो खर्चने पड़ेंगे ना, और काफी हार्ड वर्क करना पड़ेगा जैसे मैं कहूँगा. क्योंकि मैंने सानी दिल्ली बेस्ड आर्टिस्ट के ऊपर लिखी थी. ही स्पेंट विद मी 2 years एंड वी मेड दैट बुक. और त्रिवेणी में वो जो अलकाजी साहब थे, ही वेंट टू ask him for his show. तो वो कहने लगे कि I don't know you who you are. I want only very big, well established artists. So I'm not sure whether I can. He says कि this is the book somebody has written. So he said leave it with me and come after a month. So he went there after a month. He said it is such a wonderful book written. I have never read any book of this merit. And you're welcome. You must show your work here. He's the only artist who does art in straight lines. No one else in the world has done that. All perspectives in such great variety. So what I'm trying to say is that unless your work is documented, you can sell it to anyone. You can be a millionaire or whatever. It will not last because it will stay there unless somebody explains what it means. So I'm offering you. It's a very big offer.
So
That if you are
Can I
willing to
speak for
invest,
1 minute?
yeah,
Can I speak?
yes.
Can I speak?
So yes,
Yeah.
please.
I'm proud to say that we are friends of Bhatti Saab, and he narrated an incident of second year when Veen was in second year. I'm narrated when he was in third year. You know, my husband planned to leave army and start a private practice. He was an eye specialist. And then we hired a clinic, and we wanted to do interior. But we didn't want to spend more because we didn't want to hire an established architect. And Naveen was the talk of the city that time. And somebody told us, there is a student in 3rd year, he can design your clinic. So we approached him, and he came, saw the clinic, and he did the interior with sacks, boriyan hoti hai na? And it came out so well. And then we offered him money. हमने कहा कुछ पैसे तो ले लो ना भाई, अपने स्कूटर पे जाते थे, कुछ पैसे खर्चे, इतना टाइम लगाया. कहते नहीं, एक पैसा भी नहीं लेना. So I didn't know what was in his mind. You ask him now. He says, पैसे नहीं चाहिए, मुझे कविता चाहिए. So that's interesting, my personal experience with Naveen.
कौन बोल रहे हैं?
That's my mother, by the way. That's my mother.
Okay. You're welcome, Auntie. You're welcome. So
Thank you so much.
We have
Wonderful
2
session.
questions from Anita Nair. She's the one who's given 2 questions, and any one of the panelists can answer. Is modern art easier to do or learn than realistic? Is the first question. And the second one is, when one copies an art and does it in his or her own style, perhaps convert it into a cartoon or modern art, is it worth the while? So who would take the questions?
दोनों ही क्वेश्चन बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट हैं. जो सेकंड है उसका पहले बताता हूँ. पिकासो ने जो उसके बारे में बोला, उसका बढ़िया, उससे बढ़िया नहीं बताता. He says to copy others is natural, but to copy oneself is suicidal. So इसमें कॉपी को भी कुछ नहीं होती. You just respond to something and you, वो सारा आपका है, because it is given by God. It is not yours by any chance. दूसरा जो आप कह रहे हो, मॉडर्न आर्ट जो है अगर प्रॉपरली करा जाए, जिसको एब्स्ट्रैक्ट आप बोल रहे हैं, वो उन मास्टर्स ने किया हुआ है जिनकी पूरी मास्टरी से भी आगे थी रियलिस्टिक फिगर ड्राइंग में. वो उस लेवल पे जाकर करते थे. ये तो मैंने अपने 20 साल जो लिखी हैं चीजें, उनको बार बार बताता रहा हूँ. जस्ट बिकॉज यू डोंट नो हाउ टू ड्रॉ वेल और एक्यूरेटली करेक्टली, एनाटमी नहीं आती, कुछ नहीं आता, तो मॉडर्न आर्ट ऐसे नहीं होता. यू शो मी अ वर्क, आई विल टेल यू कि इसको आता नहीं, मॉडर्न ऐसे बना. तो वो मॉडर्न आर्ट जो है सबसे मुश्किल है. और जब मैं आर्ट क्रिटिक का काम करता था तो उसमें वो आके कई कहते थे, ये क्या किया हुआ जी. तो एक ने कह दिया कि ये ऐसा, तो मेरा ये ग्रैंडसन, ये देखो, ये 5 साल का, ये तो बना देगा ऐसा, इसमें क्या चीज है. मैंने कहा इट्स ए वेरी बिग कॉम्प्लीमेंट, लेकिन उसको बनाने दो ना, तुम बनाने तो देते नहीं उसको बेचारे को. 5 साल वाला, ही विल डू बेटर. एंड दिस इज द होल कॉम्प्लीमेंट. क्योंकि जो आपके इमोशन, जैसे दीपिका बाद में जोर लगा रही थी, इमोशन है, ये नॉन वर्बल है, उसमें इमोशन का क्रिएटिव इम्पल्स विल फाइंड इट्स ओन एक्सप्रेशन. अगर वो होती है तो वही आर्ट प्रॉपर है, बाकी तो सारा बेचने वाला होता है. और उसमें वो आप मैग्निफिकेंस क्या है, इसकी प्राइस क्या है, वो नहीं है, क्योंकि प्राइसिंग आज तक नहीं हुई. मैंने अपनी किताब में सारा लिखा है कि कोई भी आप बड़े से बड़ा वर्क दिखा दो, उसकी प्राइस कुछ नहीं है. वो आदमी की प्राइस है, वो मशहूर हो गया है. यहाँ पे ये जो हुसैन सबसे मशहूर है आर्टिस्ट. तो मैं एक एग्जीबिशन देख रहा था कवर करने के लिए, एक छोटा सा उसने स्केच बना रखा था. तो मैंने उसकी प्राइस पढ़ी तो 25,000 लिखा हुआ. तो मैंने उनको कहा, यार 25, मैं इससे 25 गुना अच्छा बना देता हूँ, मुझे 5 रुपए नहीं देने यार. और इसको 25,000 दे दिए. He was invited here and he sold several canvases. पैसे दे दिए लोगों ने कि इसको बुलाएंगे भाई, ये हमारे स्केच बना देगा जैसे कहेंगे. एक छोटा सा बच्चा था, वो फैमिली कहने लगी कि हमारे ये बच्चे का आप बना दो. उसने बनाया, उसकी शक्ल ही नहीं मिल रही थी. मैंने कहा इसको बनाने नहीं आता है, क्योंकि ये तो होर्डिंग पेंट करता था, उसमें नक्शा बना के, ग्राफ बना के बनाना होता है. he can't sketch, he doesn't know how to sketch. माधुरी दीक्षित का उसने किया तो फेस नहीं बनाया, उसको फेस बनाना नहीं आता, लेकिन मशहूर था, उसको करोड़ों रुपए में बिक रहा है. हम मशहूर नहीं है तो हमारे 5 रुपए नहीं लेते, उससे 10 गुना मैं बढ़िया बना देता हूँ. So what I'm trying to say is that art is something very personal. It is not something to be sold. It is a matter of expression. And when you express that in all honesty, you are paying a gratitude to God who has given you this ability. तो वो जब वो होता है, जैसे ममता को मैं कह रहा था, वो मेडिटेशन में ही होता है, वैसे नहीं होता. जो मेडिटेशन गुरु टीवी वाले बताते हैं नाच ऐसे कर दे, वो मेडिटेशन नहीं होती. मेडिटेशन इज वर्क एंड वर्क इज क्रिएटिव ऑलवेज. बाकी तो रूटीन होता है. अब देखो जो करने लगे हैं अच्छे अच्छे काम, वो तो किचन में भी अच्छा क्रिएटिव वर्क शुरू कर दिए. हम तो पहले से करते हैं. मुझे कुकिंग आती है, मैं कितनी आपको रेसिपीज अभी बना देता हूँ. What I'm trying to say is the creativity has common ancestry. वो आप लकड़ी में लगा दो, किचन में लगा दो, स्टैचू में लगा दो, कहीं भी लगा दो, वो वही होता है. उसके मटेरियल बदल जाते हैं, प्रिंसिपल्स आर द सेम. प्रोपोर्शन का है, स्केल का, वो वैसे ही है कि नमक कितना डालना, बस स्केल ही तो है. हमारे एक टीचर थे आर्किटेक्चर के, उनकी डेथ हो गई. बहुत ही कमाल के आदमी. ही वाज टीचिंग, वो तो लाहौर से काम करते आए थे. He was teaching specifications to the third year class. तो उनके फर्स्ट लेक्चर हुए तो सबसे पूछा भी तुम क्या करते हो, तुम क्या, बच्चों से सबसे पूछ लिया. कहता ओके वेरी वेल वंडरफुल. बहुत कम बोलते थे. तो नेक्स्ट टाइम व्हेन आई टेक द क्लास, एवरीवन शुड कम विद ए baked cake baked by himself or herself. वो कहते ये क्या स्पेसिफिकेशन हुई भी. अगले जो बार 30 केक ले आए. कहते बताओ कैसे बनाया, तुम बताओ कैसे बनाए. कहते ये स्पेसिफिकेशन और क्या है, उसके इंग्रेडिएंट्स कैसे हैं, कैसे मिक्स करना है, कुकिंग टाइम क्या है, क्या क्या करना है, कैसे, वो सारा वही स्पेसिफिकेशन है. वो बिल्डिंग में लगा दो, मटेरियल दूसरे. हाउ वंडरफुल.
वेरी गुड सर.
उस सेंस में मैं कह रहा हूँ माया ने जो किया है बहुत अच्छा है, क्योंकि गोम्स मेरा क्लास फेलो था, मुझे गोम्स याद आ रहा है.
Hello, over to you, Mamta. Would you like to say some few words, and then Naveen and Maya?
I would just like to thank you so much. This has been wonderful, Deepika. It's been so interesting, this exploration about how specifically because how architects have explored creativity. We can see 4 people who have explored this wonderful. It's so seamless, so deep, and you can literally go in any direction. There's so many media. It's just fascinating to hear everybody talk today and to see what wonderful work that they are doing. I'd just like to thank you for bringing us all together and giving us this wonderful forum. Thank you, Deepika.
That's my pleasure. So over to you, Naveen. I think I am the, as you said, I'm the puzzle solver.
Yes, of course you are. That is the most creative job you're doing. I tend to second Dr. Bhatti because he was so right when he answered that question that, great painters used that route. They were excellent realistic painters, and then they could make, it is the same story with, say, music. We find that all modern music makers like A.R. Rahman, if you go deeply into his, the backdrop, he is a real classical guy. He knows the in and out of classical music, So in order to achieve that state, you've got to pass through that gully of, classical and, the ingrained thing. And then you can reach that point where you can, then give it a different direction, then blast it off, because that sense of having done something will stay with you always, and that will prop you up to achieving newer heights and newer directions. That is how I feel about it. So do keep on doing, and then eventually one day you will take off. I mean, that's the way I see it. That's the way I have done it.
Very good.
So that can be said for any kind
Any
of
profession,
anything you take it up in your life.
Creativity of any kind, I think. Basically creative.
It's actually your passion.
The mantra is keep going. That's it.
You have to be passionate about whatever you take up.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that passion has to come out.
I feel there is nothing like modern art. The word is art only, It has
Nobody has understood modern art. इतनी किताबें लिख दी हैं, सारा गलत लिखा हुआ है.
हाँ.
Nobody knows कि है क्या. और
It's
ऊपर
not
से
necessary.
पोस्ट मॉडर्निज्म लगा दिए.
So it is not necessary or essential that all architects become like painters or artists, but I'm sure each
Actually,
one of
it's
us,
same old
they have
school.
their creativity in some form or the other. They include some kind of creative
Yeah.
aspect in their designs.
Yeah, yeah.
Whether it could be anything. It could be
Absolutely.
like last time we talked about the architecture could be a sculpted architecture, or perhaps in interiors or murals or anything. It would certainly come out in one way or the
मैंने
other.
उसकी और भी डिमेंशन है. मेरे स्टूडेंट, मैं तो मिल के आया उनको अमेरिका में. एक तो डॉक्टर बन गया, एक जो उनकी सिक्योरिटी है बड़ी हाई सिक्योरिटी, उसमें सिक्योरिटी का लगा हुआ है. एक सेफ्टी इंजीनियर बन गया. मैंने कहा ये क्या, एक कपड़े बेच रहा है कोई, कुछ ऐसे का रेस्टोरेंट. वो कहता है जी आर्किटेक्चर किया हुआ तभी तो इतना कमाल ये कर दिया है.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely, I second that. You know.
एक्सप्रेशन जो है किसी फॉर्म में भी हो सकती है. अब वो वैसे देखें तो वो फील्ड तो कितने अलग हैं, लेकिन वो कहते हैं जी जब मैं गया बन के एज एन आर्किटेक्ट सेफ्टी इंजीनियर, वो मुझे ही कहते हैं उसको बुलाओ. जो प्रॉपर्ली वो ट्रेंड हैं वो उनको नहीं कहते उसको बुलाओ.
I was told by somebody, I made add here, I was told by somebody, they did a research, you know, the Stanford people, they did a research on which one is the most complicated, difficult, complex profession in the world. And they came up with architecture as the leading answer, you know, to that. We are lucky that we are trained in such a way that we, you know, what Mr. Bhatti was saying right now is absolutely true. You know, I find that I have experienced it, that being an architect, this is a very fundamental training to reach out in any direction. Then, you know, then you've got something very basic with you, and then you can now do, you can be a very good cook. You can be a very good dress designer.
और कमाल एक बताता हूँ, कमाल जो है कि आर्किटेक्चर जो वर्ड है वो अब कंप्यूटर में भी आ गया. जो अच्छी बात करने होते हैं उसमें आर्किटेक्चर की बात करते हैं, आर्किटेक्चर ऑफ कंप्यूटर. तो उसमें जो कमाल की बात बताता हूँ वो ये है कि आर्किटेक्चर इज द ओनली वर्ड विच कांट बी मिसयूज्ड. डॉक्टर और इंजीनियर को कर सकते हैं, इंजीनियर डे कॉन्स्पिरेसी, डॉक्टर डे मिस्टेक, आर्किटेक्चर में नहीं कर सकते.
Yes, absolutely.
ऐसे उसका ऐसे कमाल.
Nice observation.
ये तो मैंने इसकी डेफिनेशन जो बनाई है, आप हैरान होंगे कि आई हैव रेड ऑल द डेफिनेशंस ऑफ द ग्रेट पीपल एंड देन फाउंड माय ओन, जो सबसे अलग है और सारा कंप्रिहेंसिव है. अब आप सुनो जरा ध्यान से, उर्दू में है फिर इंग्लिश में बताऊंगा. खलवत की फिजाओं में करूं जलवतें पैदा, जो खाक में पिनहा है वो हों सूरतें पैदा. उतरूं जो लहू बन के रगे संग में जिस दम, हो ताजो अजंता सी हसी मूर्तें पैदा. ये मेरी डेफिनेशन है. किसी ने कुछ ने कुछ सारा मैंने आर्किटेक्चर से ही कहलवाया. खुद बोल रहा है कि ये है कि ऑन द वेस्टलैंड आई क्रिएट हैबिटेशंस एंड फ्रॉम आउट ऑफ डस्ट आई क्रिएट मैग्निफिसेंट स्ट्रक्चर्स. और जब कैसे कैसे होता है, जब स्टोन की वेन्स में लहू बन के मैं उतरता हूँ, घूमता हूँ, फिर ताज और अजंता पैदा होता है.
Beautiful.
You know, they say
that's
that
very nice.
Yeah, they say that doctors, you know, doctors
में करूं जलवतें पैदा, जो खाक में पिनहा है वो हों सूरतें पैदा. उतरूं जो लहू बन के सगे रगे संग में जिस दम, हो ताज अजंता सी हसी मूर्तें पैदा.
Beautiful.
तो उसमें पोएट्री सारे जितने 3 आर्ट फॉर्म सारे वो आ गए, और मैंने सारे पहले लर्न करके प्रैक्टिस करके एक्सपीरियंस करके फिर लिखे. अब म्यूजिक कहते हैं, म्यूजिक की मैंने बनाई एडिफिस ऑफ साउंड, आर्किटेक्चर ऑफ साउंड इज म्यूजिक. गोयटे ने लिखा था फ्रोजन म्यूजिक. मैंने कहा उसको थॉ कैसे करना है, थॉ करना है कि आप सिंग करो फिर वापस जाएगा, आर्किटेक्चर बन जाए. वो सारी चीजें आपको सीखना चाहिए. ऐसे बोलते जाते हैं और ऐसे मिसगाइड करते हैं लोगों. आई एम वेरी हैप्पी यू पीपल आर डूइंग दिस. एक्चुअली जैसे ये कह रहे थे आपने हाथ से करो, हाथ से नहीं किया तो कुछ नहीं समझ में आता. अब बच्चे को तो हम मना करना शुरू कर देते हैं. मैं तो कई सालों से कह रहा बच्चे को मना मत करो. अभी उन्होंने रिसर्च करके देखी है, वो काला आदमी बता रहा था, बड़ा गुस्सा करके बता रहा था. कहता है आई हैव रेड ऑल द बुक्स, एवरी बुक, नो 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 नो. एक ही किताब में लिखा भी कर यार कर, बाकी सब नो नो कह रहे हैं, यू कांट डू इट, यू कांट। मुझे किसी ने उधर शुरू में किया तो इन दिस सिटी सेंटर a very big poet met me who had seen me in the Mashara. He's standing on his feet, delivered a 1 hour long lecture to me that I can't write poetry. मैंने कहा ठीक है यार, नहीं कर सकते आप, इतना मुश्किल क्यों तकलीफ कर रहे, देखेंगे क्या। तो I have won prizes, professional prizes in poetry. No architect won in the world. तो अगर आप सीखना तो कर सकते, आपका पैशन है, अपने वो सीखने की बात है। To teach is to learn twice, but to learn is to learn forever. There is no end, no direction. ये जो किताब में लिखा फिजिक्स इतनी होती है, ये बिल्कुल गलत है। मैंने सबको I have lectured to the botanists, to the geographers. मैंने कहा भाई तुम बताते, मेरे लिए तो है नहीं कोई। Scope is what you set. आपकी वो आपकी हिम्मत नहीं है, आपको विलिंगनेस नहीं है, पैशन नहीं है, फायर नहीं है, तो क्या इतना छोटा करना चाहते हो, वो नहीं होगा। 78 में मेरा छपा हुआ है कि स्पेशलाइजेशन इज नॉट फॉर ह्यूमन बीइंग्स, यू हैव टू बी ए होलिस्टिक। हमारी ट्रेडिशन में यही है। आई एम वेरी हैप्पी वी आर डूइंग इट, वेरी हैप्पी दैट दीपिका हैज लाइटेड द दीप वंस अगेन। और जो लड़की भगा के ले गए वो भी अभी इधर ही है, तो प्रॉब्लम नहीं है।
इधर हो तो एक तो मेरे को वो ब्रिगेडियर का एड्रेस चाहिए आपसे, जिससे पैसे लेने हैं।
पैसे लेने?
हाँ वो एड्रेस चाहिए सर, वो ब्रिगेडियर का।
उसने नहीं दिए थे। तब बताना था यार, तुम भूल गए उस वक्त, मेरा ख्याल बीयर पी ली होगी।
चलो, थैंक यू एवरीवन। Maya, would you like to say a few words? Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I would just like to add something about modern art. I think that modern art comes from an intellectual space, really. And we have to understand it in that process of evolving, of how art evolved and how art history happened, to really appreciate modern art. And see, the basics of any painting, including in any genre, even in modern art, is that the elements, form, line, texture, and how it comes together in a composition. Now, if you have to understand and have a handle on composition, you have to understand the basic elements. There is no way you can understand the basic elements unless you have actually done observational drawing. You have actually observed something in detail and drawn it and understood how proportions work, how line works, how texture works, how shadow works. Unless you have done that, you will not have a handle over composition, which all these elements go on to make up. So you have to go through those steps, that process, in order, because you can make out when somebody has done modern art, an abstract piece, and if they have a proper figurative or realistic art background, you can make out the difference. You can make out that the composition has come together in a certain visually correct manner. So that is why you need to have a handle over the elements, the basics first. I think it was Picasso who said, to break the rules, you first have to know them. You have to know them really well in order to break them. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Modern art was born with Einstein.
Okay.
You explore this, you will know. Nobody has stated this. And why modern art? Why no? You have to study history from the primitive times to understand what it is all about. Modernism was born with Renaissance. 5 centuries onwards, we have come this far.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think we'll end today's session. It's been quite a while, almost 2 hours, and we all have, I think, enjoyed the whole session. All 4 participants were excellent, and to hear Mr. Bhatti. सर आपका तो मैंने हाँ जी, वो किताब जरूर पढ़े और हर कॉलेज की लाइब्रेरी में भी होनी चाहिए। और
इन लोगों को तो पढ़ानी चाहिए ना, ये बोल रहे हैं जो
इनको पढ़ानी चाहिए।
मैंने सारी इतनी मेहनत करके सारी दुनिया के पढ़ के चीजें फिर बताई हैं, और फिर नई बताई चीज, दुनिया वाली नहीं, सारी नई चीज बताई। तो वो अगर नहीं पढ़ोगे, व्हाट आई एम ट्राइंग टू से इज अनलेस यू रीड You will know what you are doing. बहुत pleasant है, कलर तो वैसे pleasant इसलिए बनाए हुए हैं, अच्छा लग रहा है, अच्छा है, बहुत सुंदर लग रहा है, बड़ा complex है, intricate है, बड़ा अच्छा है, amazing, wonderful, incredible, वो कुछ भी बोल दो उसमें क्या चक्कर, incredible क्या है, वो समझने के लिए कुछ और सामान चाहिए. You have to learn philosophy, you have to learn history, you have to learn psychology, you have to learn many other things. Anatomy. आपको कैसे पता ये ठीक नहीं बनाई पेंटिंग? Anatomy सीखो पहले पता चलता.
We've already benefited so much from your teachings. For me personally, 40 years ago, and I'm sure we would like to benefit some more. We'll definitely look into it and definitely read some more.
Yes, for all of us, sir, I think all of us, most of us, I can see some my seniors as well. So it's like a refresher course today. Seems like student back in college. Am I right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's wonderful to see that Professor Bhatti is still so full of life and so full of, I mean, I'm just amazed at how much information and knowledge he has. It's just absolutely.
So that's why in my introduction for him, I said more is less. And I hope you all related to what I was trying to say. It's actually, there aren't any words to describe him. He's the ultimate.
Brain is capable of containing all the libraries of the world. Please use it. Brain is the only organ which grows when you use it. No other organ in the body. The more you use it, the more brilliant, more developed it becomes. And we are using, Einstein and other scientists have said, only 3 to 5% brain power.
So, thank you so much, Deepika, for having all of us here, and we thoroughly enjoyed it. And it actually was a refresher course, summarized refresher course in, art and architecture for all of us. And we
very happy and very proud that my students are doing so well. And Maya is the new addition. She may not be my student, but I think she has done admirably well. मैं तो फेसबुक पे भी लोगों को शाबाश देता रहता हूँ, करो यार कुछ तो काम की बात करो.
So thank
you very much.
Thank you. So I'll be sharing the link to the video very soon, and my newsletter will carry this news on Friday. And please look forward to some new sessions very soon. Every week, almost, we'll be having something new for you. And please join and like us on Facebook. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Deepika.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Thank you for bringing me into the Chandigarh circle.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Bye, Maya. Bye, Mamta.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye-bye.